Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack.
And we have Calvin Ellis ready to rock.
Now, the new X-Men animated series, X-Men 97, is blowing up. There's so much stuff going on with this. It's very popular. It's so popular that people are asking for the guy who got pushed out of the series to come back. Had you heard about that?
No, no, I didn't. Who was the guy who got pushed out?
It was like the showrunner. He they somehow he had some sort of OnlyFans thing,
Oh, good
and,
grief.
they decided that they decided to get rid of him. That was the only thing they said. They said more information was coming out afterwards. As normal, no other information came out. But I think it's probably one of the few of the LGBT community that was pushed out of a job, but none of that stuff, they don't want any of that stuff to come out, so they were hinting that there was something worse. But this thing has been, outside of course me, because I struggle with the X-Men. I've been a fan for so long, so it's kind of tough to see them um, outside of the period where they've kind of just gone away from it. But this is a big success. What are your thoughts on the X-Men so far? I think you've gotten up to the first four episodes.
Yeah. I'm done with the first. I believe so. I believe so because the next one I'm up with is Life, Death Part Two. So that's probably, I think that's episode five.
That's
But
six. So you saw five then, right?
yeah. So I'm good. I'm good as to that. I wasn't gonna watch this. I did the initial thing I did the initial viewing so we could watch so we could do the show. But I just felt okay. This is a good start. For them. What I did like was that if you were a fan of the original series, you could just get right into it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you had never seen it before, you could also just get right into it. And a lot of shows aren't doing that. They're not they're not showing that type of skill in terms of allowing a viewership to come in regardless of where they came from. And I like the fact that it was respectful of the previous viewership who are not dead. They didn't leave the planet or anything, and may actually enjoy continuing on watching a series that they enjoyed years ago. So, I was like, okay, I went through it, and but my boy Professor VA, he said, no, you hated Shogun. Let me recommend something for you that you're gonna like. Watch this. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. He's like, no, the writing's good. Everything that you've been moaning about, this one is good. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So,
You're liking
so
it?
I was, watching, and at first I was like, this is boring me. I'm gonna get out. So I'm probably gonna give this like another few minutes, and I'm out. And then Cyclops did something really cool, and I was like, well, wait a second. I was like, wait a second. So I was like, they're actually gonna treat Cyclops with respect as the leader that he is and the important fixture of the X-Men that he is. So I was like, okay. So I warmed up. I warmed up to that, and after that, after episode one, I was just like, okay, I'm with it. And every episode afterwards was very rewarding. And again, the writing, I don't think a lot of these, when I'm talking about writing, I'm not like write stuff that I want to see. Write well. One of the things they did initially in that first episode is they had Storm come in to fight the Sentinels. And when she comes in, all the Sentinels go on high alert because they're like Omega level mutant. And it's Storm. That's not the big deal. You can say who's an Omega level mutant or what have you, but it makes even more sense when later on she loses her powers. Because if she had just been there flying around doing the X-Men stuff and then she's so broken at losing her powers, that's one thing. But it's compounded when you realize just how powerful she actually is. What the team loses, what she loses, all of that type of stuff. That's good writing. You don't see it there in the first episode, but it ties together later on. This is a story tapestry, if you will, and everything gets woven together well, by the hands that's doing it. So when they did stuff like that, I'm like, yes, good writing. I mean, and then Life Death, I have to give them a lot of credit for because that was like a whole book. That's a whole book with I know you read the comic. That was a whole long story if you read it in the comic, and they were able to execute that so well. The story beats that they needed to so well in the confines of that cartoon within a few minutes. That's really. I was like, you know what? That's good. That's pretty. That is good. because most of the guys wouldn't even do that. They would just throw it out, oh this, oh let's make our own thing, and so on and so on and so forth. But everything, even down to the guy who they had for the voice actor who they had for Forge, because that's not how Forge's voice was in my mind. But I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So I was just like really, I was like, yeah. I was like, finally, some stuff I can actually get behind. And the greatest irony, I am not an X-Men reader. I'm not even an X-Men fan at the end of the day.
Yo,
I've never bought into the premise of X-Men, which I've said before, and I'm enjoying this. From stem to stern, I'm enjoying this. So that's
well,
again, if anybody's over there, oh, Cal's always down on everything. No, I don't really like the X-Men, and I'm enjoying this show because it's well written. Got it? There's a big difference between something that's well written and something that isn't. And when something is well written, you may even enjoy characters that you say you don't like.
well, for me, I think the hard part is trying to take these long X-Men stories and try and kind of force it into these short dramas. Like the second issue, that episode is kind of getting into a couple of different things that happen, a couple of stories kind of mashed together. And the hard part is some of the, excuse me, the characterization kind of with Scott and introducing Madeline, and then Madeline kind of goes away. And then I was like, okay, we're
In
gonna
the you mean just so I'm clear, you're talking about the show or the comic?
the show because
Okay.
Madeline comes back in the second episode, and they introduce Jean comes back in the second episode after the pregnancy, and someone
Yeah.
said that Wolverine can't, they have to watch over what Wolverine does because they don't want him cutting up people. So we have him almost like the midwife in this series. He drives Jean to the hospital. He's there while she's in the sick bay, when she should be dealing with he should be dealing with Sinister. So it's kind of taking all these stories and kind of mashing them into these episodes. And I never was a fan of Mr. Sinister. So when you get to three, and he kind of becomes like this
You,
mad. Hmm?
I can see that. I can see you not being. I could see. I should. No, I should tease you right. You're not a fan. You're not a fan of the Prime Minister, Mister Sinister.
Well, the thing was that he kind of was just. I'm not even sure why they came up with that design. Like it was just like they threw it together. You can see he looked like an evil Colossus, and then now they
And
turned him to a like he's like a little more what he was in what's that thing in Age of Apocalypse, and they gave him these teeth like if you see in the picture of Mojo, they got the same kind of teeth where it's just like, well, I guess they're trying to add this mad scientist thing, but they'll kind of that's the thing. When you go to three, you kind of get the Belasco. They're doing the Fall of the Mutants in like a half hour episode. Like you can't do all the Fall of the Mutants, and Ileana shows up as Morph has to turn into to Ileana to kind of showcase some of the stuff from Limbo, and then the same struggle was one of the later episodes. Well, in Life Death, that's the hard part when you have doing the story where it's Storm and Forge, but then they also had the adversary who came in the was he the fall? So it was Inferno was episode three is after Inferno because that's deals with Limbo, and then so four kind of threw in the Fall of the Mutants that deal with X-Men have to deal with adversary who kind of tricks Storm and does all this stuff. So Forge
with
doesn't.
Sinister's with Sinister's outfit, weren't they going for something like what was that character from Hellraiser? Pinhead, at least with the garment, maybe not the face and everything. And that's what I thought they were going for, like something evocative of that type of thing from a horror,
Possibly.
with the horror from a horror movie.
He didn't. He just the thing is, he kind of came like you had the because this is trying to deal with the early on. It's trying to mutant liberation kind of deal with the massacre a little bit. So you had in the X-Men, you had Morlocks being massacred. Then you
Hmm.
had the massacre, which was done by the Marauders, but the Marauders didn't have a leader. So then at some point they say, "Oh, there's someone else behind this," and then they say, "Mr. Sinister," and I'm like, "All right." So first off, we're going into sleazoid name type of deal. That's why everyone when they talk about the sleazoids, they call them the Brood. No one uses the fact that Sleazoids was thrown around all the time. That's how we knew the Brood when we were kids. And now people remember, hey, wait a second, they also call the Brood. We only call them the Brood now. We will not call them Sleazoids. That was a Kitty Pryde joke. They're like, no, like everybody called them Sleazoids. Like that was the thing. But Mr. Sinister is kind of the one of the few, the second other corny name in the X-Men. Fun fact, the Morlocks was originally going to be called the Ugloids. So they fixed that. So Mr. Sinister had the bad name, and then they tried to shoehorn him into Cyclops' origin, that he did all these tests and he came up with the thing is, you don't have to kill yourself. Every time they got Cyclops, they killed themselves on trying to create an origin with him, rather than saying, hey, at some point he could see regular, and then at some point he had some eye troubles. He shouldn't have to kill anybody or blow through a building. At some point he has some eye troubles where he starts seeing everything in red, and then at some point someone develops these tests. They give him these glasses that work. They say, oh, these glasses help you see, and then at some point the manifestation of the power comes later. So he doesn't kill anybody, but he maybe destroys something and leaves the orphanage and runs away. But then no, they had to throw in Sinister to make him important, and ever since they did that and said that he's after the Jean Grey, DNA, and they use all that stuff, it's just kind of like they're force fitting all this stuff. When you have a clean slate, you can just do a fun cartoon, but at the same time, people are having fun with the cartoon. So, like the same with the early X-Men. I didn't like how they kind of force fisted. When they first did the first episode, they did a story with the Sentinels, where Sentinels kill Morph, and we have a story where the X-Men come back and then they take out the Sentinels, and it's resolved. And then same thing, they were doing that, but a lot of times when they get to existing stories, which are classics, they kind of go in the way of, well, we can't have Proteus being a really bad villain. We got to soften him up. Like Mojo one, they kind of did what Mojo is, which I'm not a fan of Mojo, but they did. Mojo's like your arcade, your fantasy adventure type thing. But I say to you this: if the last thing you saw was Life, Death, and the Mojo thing, then the next 3 for you are going to be pretty big, because a lot of crazy stuff happens. A lot of things that keyed in from the last episode of the original series work its way into this one. And, and some other Marvel characters show up in issue 7. So any other last words you want to talk about with this?
Hey, if you haven't seen it already, go see it.
All right, Spinner Rack out.